his knowledge of this case is tremendous. If you don't know, he is the researcher who brought the Zapruder film to the American public in 1975 on Geraldo's show, Good Night America. So we all owe him a debt of gratitude because Life magazine had the rights to the Zapruder film. And while they had released the still frames of some of the Zapruder film, there was some that had been withheld and the American public had never seen the full Zapruder film. Because of Robert Groden, we all did. Hello and welcome back to my channel. I'm Jess Cannell, and if you're new, then welcome. I would love to earn your subscription today. We are going to have kind of a fun and a little bit different episode than we've had in other series or things like that, because we are going through portions, or I'm going to highlight a few favorite things about this book, JFK Absolute Proof. Now, the first thing that I need to tell you about this book is that one of the viewers actually was helping solve some questions that we had after reading a recent book about Jean Hill. Jean Hill was one of the observers of the assassination across from the grassy knoll. And we had some questions about her and her life. And so a viewer reached out and said, Jess, I have a book that has some photos that might help us answer these questions. And so she started sending me photos. We started dialoguing about it. And then I happened to mention in the video how grateful I was for her doing that because I wouldn't be able to have this book. And she graciously reached out and said, if you'll just send an email to this lady, she is going to mail you a copy. So that viewer, Mary Helen, offered to send it to me. And I'm so grateful. So the next thing I need to tell you is that I sent the email to the email address that she said, not realizing that it was purchasing directly from the author, Robert Groden. So when the message came back to me from his wife, I didn't realize it was his wife. I thought maybe is it his wife? Is it a daughter? Is it a family member that handles these things? But I noticed that she had the same last name. And I reached out, let her know that I actually live very close to them. And so she said, well, how about this? How about we have coffee? So I'll share a photo. I was able to have coffee with Robert Groden and his beautiful wife, Janet. They were so much fun. And we had 90 minutes of what was for me bliss, because we just got to talk all things the JFK assassination. He signed my book for me, and I just got to sit and talk with them. And then every now and then they would reach over and open up to a particular page and give me insights into various questions. So we talked and talked, and hopefully we'll be meeting again, which is why I'm only going to share a few highlights from the book, because what I'm actually hoping is that he and I can together sit and go through some of the elements of this book in person with you all starting very soon. He has agreed. We just have to work out our schedules. So hopefully I can bring that to you, because his knowledge of this case is tremendous. If you don't know, he is the researcher who brought the Zapruder film to the American public in 1975 on Geraldo's show, Good Night America. So we all owe him a debt of gratitude because Life magazine had the rights to the Zapruder film. And while they had released the still frames of some of the Zapruder film, there was some that had been withheld and the American public had never seen the full Zapruder film. Because of Robert Groden, we all did. And that happened, y'all, before I was even born. So we owe this man a tremendous debt of gratitude. The other thing I want to tell you about this book that I did not know I would be getting, he actually pulled this out and unwrapped it for me. The copies that you get from them will have this, which is an actual ticket from the Texas Theater from 1963. I couldn't believe it. It still has the perforations and everything. So he was able to acquire from a woman who worked there. There was the threat of fire one day, and so I believe the manager just gathered together a bunch of materials that had not been used, and so he was able to acquire them. It says enclosed is an actual 1963 ticket from the Texas Theater. This is what Lee Oswald had in his hand when he bought popcorn from the manager, Butch Burroughs. So what a treasure! Can you even believe it? Anyway, so I have this in my spot that shows the Texas Theater there. I actually went to coffee with my husband last weekend and we drove past the Texas Theater now. I'll share that photo as well. But it still is a working theater. And interestingly, there was actually a man with a gun out front. So I don't know if there was something particular going on or if it's always guarded. I don't know, but anyway, that is the state of that. Well, let's go through this book really quickly. Like I said, we are not going to look in depth at this book yet. I'm hoping to do that and use it perhaps as the basis for a series of conversations with Robert Groden. Now, this is the picture of Robert Groden with the quote. This is the man who wrote it, and this is what he looked like when he became known to the world in 1975 as one of the two men. The other one was Dick Gregory, the comedian, who released the Kennedy assassination film by Zapruder on Geraldo's show. Now, this is the quote. It says, "When I think of how many people have died or have been hurt for trying to reveal the truth of the Kennedy assassination, I realize how truly fortunate I am to still be here." He is now 79 years old. Something amazing that I want to share with you that I was able to do was, because he had had different things going on in his life in December and January, he had completely missed a piece of Kennedy news that I was able to relate to him. And so I'm actually eager in our next conversation to hear if he's gotten to listen to the Billy Saul Estes and Clifton Carter conversation that was released in January. For me, that was something that was amazing and totally new. It seems very authentic, but what I did not expect, actually, I'm going to pull out my notes because if you guys know me, you know that I am a note taker. Like sermon notes, I get almost word for word. I mean, not exactly, but I could nearly preach back the sermon every Sunday. But I took this many notes during our conversation. I just pulled out my pen and started taking notes. And something funny that was said when I told him about the Billy Saul Estes conversation was he listened to me describe it. He was pretty enwrapped because he had not heard about that conversation. And he said, well, Billy Saul Estes called me one day while I was in Dealey Plaza and threatened to kill me. So here I am relating the conversation about Billy Saul Estes to this JFK researcher that I just feel so grateful to even be in conversation with. And I'm getting to communicate to him about this conversation. And then he says, yeah, I've talked to that guy. He called me and threatened to kill me. And then he said, I was actually at his funeral also. Next, he told me that he actually met Billy Saul Estes at Madeline Brown's apartment. So that would be LBJ's mistress, you guys. And just as I'm listening, I'm like, you have got to be kidding me. Like, I am transmitting this news to you, but you are just a wealth of information about this man. So I'm eager to hear from him. I'm sure he can verify that East Texas twang that they do where they talk like this and they just have a lot to say. And, you know, I grew up hearing that because I grew up here in Texas, and a lot of relatives and men in church and little pastors that I've heard over the years have all talked like that. But I would love to hear from him to verify for sure, because he's actually spoken to the man, Billy Saul Estes. And he said that in Madeline Brown's apartment, that Billy Saul Estes leaned over to him and said, you know, I could tell you everything, and winked at him. And that Robert Groden said, well, you know where to find me. But he said he never did tell me everything. So anyway, that is something fascinating that happened during our conversation. But what this book is over 1,000 photographs, and it is printed on really thick excellent high quality acid-free paper so that each photograph is preserved in a way that it will not degrade, where the color will not degrade. And so that in itself is fascinating, but something I did not realize, because I'm not, I love the JFK assassination. I'm enjoying learning about it with you all. I am not an expert yet, but I didn't understand enough about Robert Groden's background. So I knew that he had worked with a photographic company that had a contract with Life magazine, and that he had obtained that copy of the Zapruder film, which is how he was able to release it. I did not realize that because of that, Congress had opened up investigations, and they invited him to work on the staff so that he could do audio and visual research for the congressional investigations into the JFK assassination. And so because of that, this book also has a lot of the documents and insights into the things that were researched by Congress when they were investigating the conspiracy to kill the president. And I use that word intentionally because while the Warren Commission found no evidence of a conspiracy, the House Select Committee on Assassinations did indicate that they had evidence of conspiracy. And so he has things like documents, transcripts, CIA evidence, interesting things that can fuel your understanding of this situation. For example, here is a photo of Lee Harvey Oswald in the Soviet Union. It says he had been contacted by several CIA-connected individuals, and several observation photos of him were in his CIA file. Very fascinating information that if you are at all interested in this, you are going to want this, because not only is it a large book, but it is a lot of information. It blends together photographic evidence with written information that will help you make sense of the evidence. So for example, chapter 2 is all about setting up the patsy, and it has all sorts of information about Lee Harvey Oswald. Chapter 3, a photographic record of the assassination. Now, if you don't know, Robert Groden is the largest holder of photographic evidence about the JFK assassination and video evidence of the JFK assassination of anyone in the world. And so we're getting top-notch looks at photos that are rare, photos that not many people have access to, and certainly not the collection that he has acquired. So there is the play-by-play of all of it. There is deep information that has details that I did not know. One thing I love about this book as well that I will show you is that whenever there is information that you might miss, almost always he has these little red arrows. So for example, this one here says, arrow shows Secret Service Clint Hill. So like he is the one who ran up onto the bumper. So you get to see his position in connection with the car. So a lot of elements like that where you get the photo and you also get helpful information to help you decode what you're looking at. I'll tell you, I'm skipping ahead quite a bit in the book, but I'll tell you one of the things that was perhaps the most shocking to me is that he was invited by a man who had found 9 rolls of film that was taken during, these are the 9 rolls of film that was taken during Lee Harvey Oswald's medical procedures at Parkland. There was a physician who went around taking photos. And so when they first developed these photos, it says when the film was first developed, now this had been in 2004, that he was contacted. So more than 40 years after the assassination, it said it had sat and remained hidden for 40 years, these 9 rolls of film. More than 4 decades of time, heat and humidity had taken their toll. Not one frame was in evidence, only a deep black. No images could be seen on any of the film. So they tried an advanced technique. They treated it with a chemical that cleared some of the blackness off. Then they started using other techniques, and there were 85 usable pictures. I'm going to show you one page of them, but there are 3 or 4 pages of these photos, but it actually shows Lee Harvey Oswald in surgery. The last photos of him gasping for breath, and then photos after he had passed away. I didn't even know there were photos of that. So that's the level of research and time, and not just old things, but new things that Robert Groden has collected over decades that he's sharing with us. And like I said, sharing detailed analysis as well. For example, he was a part of and privy to the discussions of the audio footage that was taken on the dicta belt of the Dallas police officer who had either accidentally or intentionally jammed the button on his radio. And so instead of, what it did was jam the radios on that channel, but also his dicta belt retained a recording of the entire 2.5 minutes that started on Houston Street and went past the assassination. So all of it was there, and they were able to isolate, by taking out the motorcycle sounds, they were able to isolate the sounds of at least 6 gunshots, and it said up to, I believe, 14 gunshots. And so that whole analysis is in here. I mean, this book is such a gift to me. Again, thank you so much, Mary Helen. But I can't thank you enough, not just for the information, but for the privilege of getting to meet Robert Groden and make that connection, which I had no idea about just 2 weeks ago. And here we are. We live close enough that hopefully I'll be able to have some conversations with him and bring more to you about his history with the JFK assassination. And then I did just want to read a little bit to you from his book, High Treason, which I brought with me, and he signed that for me as well. But High Treason, the assassination of President John F. Kennedy, what really happened. Now this one, I believe, was published in 1983, perhaps. It was in the 80s, 1989. And this was his first full look at the assassination. So as a means of closing this out, I just want to read to you one page from this book. It's actually like before even the introduction. It has these quotes on one page, and I just thought it summarizes his view and the view that he's had. Like I said, this one was published 26 years after the assassination, and it's been 36 years since this book was published, and this man is still on a mission for truth. So here are the quotes that he identified in 1989 as worthy of consideration, and that's what I'm going to leave us with for this video. This is a cable to the U.S. consul from President Kennedy in 1961. U.S., as a matter of policy, cannot condone assassination. President Kennedy, 1961. The next is a quote from Malcolm Muggeridge in May 1966. It says, "In the eyes of posterity, it will inevitably seem that in safeguarding our freedom, we destroyed it. That the vast clandestine apparatus we built up to probe our enemy's resources and intentions only served in the end to confuse our own purposes. That the practice of deceiving others for the good of the state led infallibly to our deceiving ourselves. And that the vast army of intelligence personnel built up to execute these purposes were soon caught up in the web of their own sick fantasies, with disastrous consequences to them and us." Then the Washington Post, November 15th, 1965, it says, "In psychological warfare, the intelligence agencies of the democratic countries suffer from the grave disadvantage that in attempting to damage the adversary, they must also deceive their own public." That one is particularly poignant. It's definitely pointing to the idea that, hey, if they were politically deceiving and putting up propaganda for other countries, why would we think they hadn't have done it with our own country? And then the final quote is from Senator Stuart Symington for the Committee of CIA Oversight. The quote is, "There is no federal agency of our government whose activities receive less scrutiny and control than the CIA." So I am working through this book just personally. It's fantastic. It's been so great, and I'm learning so many things. So if you have any information about Robert Groden that you think is important for me to know, please leave it in the comments. I am so looking forward to the potential of filling this notebook up more with more meetings with this man. And I am so grateful to have this book in my possession with the Lee Harvey Oswald ticket, which, by the way, if you get the book from them, he is willing to sign it for you, so you can let them know. I'm going to put that information in the comments. He is willing to sign it, and also it will come with one of these 1963 tickets from the Texas Theater, so you would have your very own. It is an expensive book, but they are giving a discount, I believe, for people who buy it from them directly. So if you buy it off of Amazon, I believe it's $100. If you buy it from them, there's a discount, and you get it signed, and you get the Texas Theater ticket. So check the show notes for that information. I'll put it all there, so if you're interested in the book, you can do so. Let them know that I sent you. I would love for them to know that it's our listeners, that our little community here that we've built that are interested in the book. So let me know in the comments anything related to the things that we've talked about, and I hope you enjoyed this little peek at JFK Absolute Proof by Robert Groden. Have a great day. Bye-bye.